Hello, everybody. So I'm Joyet Wagi from the Association Bilan Carbon, and I will animate this webinar session. So this is the agenda of this session. First, I would introduce the project quickly through the climate change challenges and the link with the carbon footprint of the organizations. In the second part, I will focus on the Clim'Foot projects and the way the project has been occurred. We have the chance to have two partners. Thank you, Simona, and thank you, Dinko, who will make a testimony about their involvement in the project. And in the third part, we will give the floor to the attendees to respond to your question and to know more about your expectation and the way you can use the platform material to replicate the project. So about the climate change challenges. Climate change is our main environmental issue for the beginning of the 21st century. The greenhouse effect is generated by the accumulation in the atmosphere of greenhouse gas like CO2, CH4, but also water. Between 1880 and 2012, a warming of 0.85 degree of the Earth's surface has been detected, and this warming is due to human activities, mainly burning fossil fuels, cutting down rainforests, and livestock farming. 4 IPCC scenarios that you can see in this slide have been projected by the IPCC group to keep the global warming under 2 degrees. We have to act now. The impact of the climate change. The impact of this climate change will have known effects on our lives and on the planet regarding access to energy and water, population movements, ecosystem changes, etc. It is an issue for all human societies around the world. For some, it is only an economic matter. For others, it's a public health problematic. And for the unfortunate one, it's already a major concern as they suffer the early consequences of the global warming. As you can see, it could be a rising sea level, cyclone, extreme temperatures, human health, political tension also, but climate refugees and so on. That is why the Paris Agreement have been signed in December 2015 to limiting the extent of the climate change that requires policies to mitigate the greenhouse effect and implementing actions giving priority to cutting GHG emissions and increase carbon sink. But for this reason, even if 195 countries agreed on a global action plan to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial level, unfortunately, the national climate action plans presented in Paris are not sufficient to reach this target, but it demonstrates a necessary trend to follow. So what about carbon footprint of organization and European policies? We are well known that the European region is one of the most dynamic in fighting climate change, but what are the European Union commitments? So for several years now, the European Union has adopted objectives and developed tools to reduce the impact of climate change and to guide member states toward a resource efficient, low carbon and climate resilient economy. The European Emission Trading Scheme, or the EU ETS, is the main tool for cutting GHG emissions, and it covers around 45% of the EU's GHG emissions. And there are also another package which was developed, engaged since 2008, which is the EU Climate and Energy Package, with the aim to meet EU's climate and energy targets for 2020. And now this package is under revising to build a new EU 2030 package to attain new energy strategy targets for 2030. But what we can see is that there is no common framework that has been proposed to involve the less polluting organization, so that organization which are not covered by the EU ETS, and for which the evaluation of indirect emissions is of high importance to reduce their global environmental footprint. What is the low carbon transition? The low carbon transition is the final objective of any climate strategy, leading to a balance between GHG emission and GHG offset. And Clim'Foot is the project Clim'Foot is the first step in developing a global approach for organizational environmental footprint initiatives. So the first step is to avoid GHG emissions, and after that you could reduce your emission. And finally, if we can reach the carbon neutrality, we will have the balance between the emission and the offsets. And the global objective is, of course, to build a fair and more resilient society. So now we can talk about the core of the project. So what is the Clim'Foot project? The Clim'Foot project is a LIFE project, a 3-year project with the aim to address the lack of ambitious public policies to support the harmonized calculation and reduction of the carbon footprint of organizations. So the Clim'Foot is the first step in developing a global approach for an organizational environmental footprint initiatives, but it has specific objectives. The first one was to launch a dynamic European network around carbon footprint of organization in accordance with EU initiatives. The second specific objective, was to develop a country-specific and free of charge emission factors database to allow all participating countries to have the necessary material to calculate their carbon footprint. The third specific objective was to develop a capacity building program to train end users in the implementation of public policies for calculating and reducing carbon footprints of organizations to achieve the EU climate objectives. And all this objective will bring the entire value chain, also from policymakers, but also for investors around the EU organizations, to implement an efficient mitigation plans that will both improve their carbon footprints and boost their competitiveness. The LIFE project, the platform allowed to highlight all the material developed so that other organizations could replicate the project. And also there are some methodology which were developed around the project. The development of methods and tools required to implement national public policies and to improve the skills of all stakeholders in carbon footprint of organization assessment and management. Through the implementation of voluntary programs to support both public and private organizations in calculating and reducing their carbon footprint in the 5 partners countries that I will explain after this slide. And these voluntary programs are a demonstration phase to test the tool developed since the beginning of the project. Who was the Clim'Foot partners and what are the voluntary organizations? So there were 5 participating countries in this LIFE Clim'Foot project: France, Croatia, Greece, Hungary, and Italy. In France, ADEME was the coordinating beneficiary, and they were also the IFC, the Institut de Formation Carbone. The logo of each partners are below this slide, as you can see. In Croatia, we have the EIHP which is the Energy Institute Rove Pozar, which cooperates with Croatian, regional, and EU institutions on developing sustainable energy and taking into account the environmental and climate protection. In Greece, we had the CRES, which is the Greek national entity for the promotion of renewable energy sources. In Hungary, we had the HOI, the Herman Otto Institute, which is a non-profit organization which provide professional assistance and services to the Ministry of Agriculture in Hungary and supports the knowledge-based governance in the field of environmental protection. And in Italy, we had two organizations. The first one was Enea, which is a public research organization that provides consultancy services for enterprises, public authorities, and the central governments in the field of new technology, energy, and sustainable environment. And the second one was Eco Innovazione, which is a consultancy firm set up as an Enea spin-off, which support both private and public sectors in implementing eco-innovation processes using a life cycle-based method and tools. So each of these partners has implemented in their countries a voluntary program. So their organization joined the project in the voluntary basis, and we had public organization, but also private organization, because the project was for all kind of organizations. And if you would like to target the reduction of GHG emission, all stakeholders from private and public organization have to involve in this strategy. So I try to summarize quickly in this table the number of organizations involved in each countries. And you can see that for France, there was only private organization, but the voluntary program for France was different from those implemented in the 4 other countries, because in France, there was also advanced organization in CFO calculation. So they implemented another kind of voluntary program to assess the organization strategy, and not for the CFO calculation. So the project highlights, there are many materials and tools developed during the Clim'Foot project. The first step was the creation of a training material. First of all, the policymakers represented by each member of the organization's partners follow a first training to give them the case to engage in defining and engaging carbon accounting policy for organizations. And the second kind of training was the training delivered to the organizations. So the first policymakers trained deliver the training at a national level to the voluntary organization which joined the project, and that allowed to give them the first tool, the first lessons to assist and about the climate change. But the training material also allows them to assist and to understand what they are doing in calculating their carbon footprint. 2 toolboxes have been developed, one for the organizations and another one for the policymakers. These 2 toolboxes are available on the Clim'Foot platform. The toolboxes bring a way for each kind of public to develop to improve their knowledge about the carbon accounting and climate challenges to the final step, which is calculating their carbon footprint. Also, 5 national databases of emission factors were developed, so 1 database per country. And finally, we also bring all the emission factors developed in one database, which is the Clim'Foot database, which contain European emission factors. And the main step was the implementation of voluntary programs, because we needed to have organization which were volunteer to test the tools developed and to follow the training and to calculate the carbon footprint in order to implement a mitigation plan and reduce their GHG emissions. And the main material or the main support was the web-based platform, which containing all the material developed during the 3 years of the project. So the training materials, as I explained, there was 2 kinds of training material. One for the policymakers. Typically, it was the environmental agencies of each countries represented by the partners, and another kind of training delivered to the organizations. In each country, there is at least 2 sessions of training, one for private organization and one for public organizations. And after the training, there was the development of the national databases of emission factors, because we need to have emission factors to calculate organizations' carbon footprint. And if we developed national emission factors, it allows organizations to have more reliable data specific to the context, to the national context, to calculate their carbon footprint. And the third step was the implementation of the voluntary program. So most of the organization trained in the first phase was involved in the voluntary program, and they were the tester of the tools developed, and they calculate their carbon footprint in order to reduce it. There are also the toolboxes available on the platform, as I said, and the cooperation platform, which contain all the materials developed during the project. So that is, in few words, the projects and the development made during 3 years. And now I will give the floor to Dinko Durdevic from EIHP, which is the Croatian partners, who will made a testimony about the Croatian experience in this project.
So thank you for the introduction and this opportunity to present our case from Croatian side. As it was mentioned, my name is Dinko Đurđević. I come from the Energy Institute Hrvoje Požar in Croatia, and the department I'm working in that was working on the LIFE Clim'Foot project is the department for the renewable energy sources, energy efficiency, and environment protection. And we are working closely in the topic of climate mitigation and governance projects. So we were actively participating in this Clim'Foot project, and I will go briefly through the activities that we participated. As it was mentioned before, the main objectives of the LIFE Clim'Foot project for Croatian side were the development of the national tool for the carbon footprint calculation of organizations. And we mainly focused here on translating and adapting the French bill on carbon tool to the Croatian conditions. So mainly translating, but also inputting our own emission factors, so they could be used here in Croatia. Another objective was the preparation of the national emission factor database that I mentioned, that was inputted in the bill on carbon tool. We did this with the help of our subcontractor, Econerg, who developed 132 country-specific emission factors. Additionally, we developed 40 country-specific emission factors that were mainly related to the energy sector, since we are strong in this field. And additionally, we prepared 35 European emission factors that were included in the tool itself. The last objective was the implementation of the national Bill on Carbon Clean-Foot tool on at least 10 organizations in Croatia. And regarding this, we had to contact and communicate with organizations on our national level. And we had to identify at least 50 interested organizations, 25 from private and 25 from public sector in Croatia, that was already mentioned. We contacted around 500 organizations from private and public sector, and ended up with 51 interested participants. From these 51 participants, we had to select 10 organizations for the carbon footprint organization calculation. And additionally, from those 10 organizations, we had to select 3 to 5 organizations that would develop an action plan for carbon footprint of organization reduction. We ended up with 20 organizations that were interested in the calculation. From those 20, 12 of them actually calculated the carbon footprint, and we created an action plan, not specifically us, but we helped these organizations create their action plans for 3 of those 12 organizations. As it was also mentioned before, we had 2 types of trainings, one for the public sector and one for the private sector, where you can see on these pictures how it looked. We created trainings, 2-day trainings, 2 times 2-day trainings for the public sector and the private sector. In the public sector, we, let's say, also participated, since we are a public company. And in the end, as I said, we calculated the carbon footprint of organization for 12 organizations and created an action plan for 3 of them. One was for the Energy Institute Herbert Požar, and the other 2 were Ericsson Nikola Tesla, that is a private company, and Faculty of Economics, University of Rijeka, which is a public organization. From these three, only us, the EIHP, and the Faculty of Economics continued to calculate our carbon footprint of the organization. And the Faculty of Economics was even more, let's say, eager. They even created a report for 2016 to 2018 on the carbon footprint of their organization, and they're continuing to do so. I think they're even preparing during the year. They are preparing the report for 2019. To show how our country-specific emission factors look like, here are some examples. And as you can see, as I mentioned, they're mainly related to the energy sector, since we are strong in this field. To show you the example how the carbon footprint of organization calculation worked, I will show you on the example of the Energy Institute. As you can see, the overview of activities considered in the calculation. I won't go into many details, but just to make this picture, this figure more clearer, we are mainly working with studies such as environmental studies, due diligences, and so on. So our main product is paper, something on paper. As you can see, so maybe this picture is clearer, and we were focusing on scope 1, 2, and 3 to calculate our carbon footprint. So here are our results for the period from 2015 to 2017, and you can see that we ended up with a single number, which is the most important for us, so we can compare it to previous and after years. And you can see we determined the percentage of the carbon footprint, which ends up in scope 1, 2, or 3. As you can see, we ended up also with the source categories of the emission and their contribution. And it ended up that since our production of capital goods of our studies is quite small, since we are a relatively small company, main emission sources from our part is transport of people, which is related to the business trips, mainly with airplanes, but mostly with cars. And since we have this figure, this chart, we can determine where to reduce our carbon emission and carbon footprint. So as you can see, as I mentioned, the thing where, since transport of people is increasing in our case, is mainly related to the fact that we had workforce growth from 2015 to 2017, so we had more business trips. We ended up with the key sources analysis of our carbon footprint for each year, 2015 to 2018, but this is an example for 2017. And from this chart, we can see where we can also reduce our emissions, and it is mostly related to the business travel. From this, we can work on our action plan and suggest the concepts and ideas how to reduce these emissions. And we can then compare it to previous years and make plans for the following years. Unfortunately, since carbon footprint calculation is a bit complicated and it is mostly related to the I'm not sure how to put this, but I will show you on the following slide. Here we compared our carbon footprint calculation with other companies. However, this is not quite accurate and good. We have different sources of emissions. For example, European Court of Auditors also works with mostly papers and studies, but they also have other sources of emissions which we can compare to. So we can mostly compare our own emissions with our previous and future years. This is the from our side, what happens, our testimony, what happened to in Croatia during the project. I would just like to add that we also included during the project our Ministry of Environment and Energy, since they are related to the topic of carbon footprint mitigation activities. They participated in the project. Unfortunately, they couldn't be more involved due to their other activities. But in the afterlife plan, we are trying still to include them in this topic and try to involve them more into climate mitigation activities, so we could, let's say, spread these project outputs in Croatia. I hope that was short enough. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm not sure if it is right, if now is the time or later.
Dinko, thank you for your presentation.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was a way to highlight the fact that the scope 3 emission that represent more than 70% of your organization's emissions are the most important to account among with the Bilan Carbon Clim'Foot tool, and that's the way you impulse most of organizations involved on the voluntary program to calculate their indirect emission from the scope 3. And now we will hear the testimony of Italy. If Simona is ready to have the floor.
Hello. We have. I am Simona Scalvi, and I work in Enea. We have do the same step of the other partner. We have prepared a national database, the voluntary program involved with policymaker. About the database, there is a version Italian national database online and in Excel format. This was a very hard work. We have developed the methodology to develop the national databases, and this document was useful to the other partner to construct their databases. Now there is a Clim'Foot database. It's a big database with a lot of emission factor from different countries. Some are specific, country specific. Some are other are European emission factor. In all the data set, all the database was constructed with the different sources: LCA database, literature data, emission factor databases, environmental product declaration, and EPD studies. Enea database include 182 national emission factor and 120 European emission factor. We have developed fossil fuel consumption, electricity consumption, freight transport, passenger, chemicals, waste, agricultural, mineral, and fugitive emissions. We have now we have developed other new 16 emission factor. In premise, we have update the Italian electricity mix with the new data from the 2016, and we have implemented 14 food and beverage emission factor. Now we are in the online version of the Clim'Foot database, and we have update the Italian version of the Bilan Carbon tool. with this new element. The bilan carbon tool was developed by the France ADEME partner and ABC, sorry. And we have used this framework. We have introduced the national emission factor. So after this we have create Italian version of the bilan carbon tool. After this, we have developed with the a training with the several organizations. Indeed, we have applied the voluntary program. In the first part of the voluntary program, we have training 19 organizations for about 30 participants. And after this, we have helped the organization to calculate their carbon footprint and give them support to use the bilan carbon tool. And after this, we have helped them to interpret in the result interpretation. And then the 3 organizations developed a mitigation action plan, and 1 organization developed a social balance report, where they include in this report, environmental report, the update for the environmental compartment. And these are the organizations that are involved in the Cleanfoot project. After the project, we have create a cooperation with the environment minister in the project named Creiamo PIA. This is the Italian name. In this name, this project implement mitigation. The aim of the project is to implement mitigation action in the public administration, and then they are using the bilan carbon tool as an instrument for the PA, and we have the project have developed several training events for the public administration. In total, at the moment, 5 workshops, 1 in Rome, Turin, Naples, Padua, and Bari, and 2 laboratory sessions in Florence and Turin for the use of the Cleanfoot calculator and the CFO case study. Moreover, the organization involved in the voluntary program some organizations have continued to implement mitigation action. For example, ARPAE has started to calculate the carbon footprint in the new office with the updated version of the bilan carbon tool. Moreover, Città Metropolitana di Torino have presented the experience in 3 conferences, and we are continuing. We are create a network among Cleanfoot partner, and sometimes we send them update of the project. These are all the dissemination action promoted by the organization involved in Clim'Foot project. These are not news ENEA, but news of the organization involved in the Clim'Foot project. Thanks for the organization, for the attention. If you need some information or you want to do some question, I am here.
So thank you, Simona, for your presentation.
Okay.
So as you can see, for other attendees, the goal of this platform was to centralize all tools and materials developed during the project, and as Croatian and Italian partners, each partner has translated the tools and the training material to bring to the national organization material available in the country language. But there's also an English version of the tool and the material to allow the dissemination of the project, as one of the objectives is to foster the development of common methodologies and standard to calculate carbon footprint of organization in Europe wide. That's why the English version can be used by other countries. So now, if you have some questions among the attendees, we can give you the floor.
Yes, it's Ivan. I have a question.
Ivan, can you introduce yourself in quick words, please?
Yes, I'm participating from France. I am a consultant, and I use the bilan carbon for some companies. My question would be, do you have any example of international companies that have used the bilan carbon in the national versions that you have established? So maybe for the Italian part of the company, the Italian tool, for the Croatian one, the Croatian, and maybe in other countries. I am clear?
No, sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah. Imagine you have a company that has a business in several countries, let's say in Italy, in Croatia, in France, in Germany.
Okay.
So now you have adapted the tool for your own country with the emission factors,
Yeah.
especially, but not only. Do you have examples of company having businesses in several countries using the local tool for each part of the company?
Okay. Perhaps I understand. In the tool, there are all the emission factors developed by ADEM and Association Bilan Carbon. We add the Italian emission factor. So in the tool, there are national emission factor, but there are also emission factor from France and from other European countries. So is it possible to use this tool for the organization that have different organization in Europe? I mean.
Oh, that's very clear. Thank you.
And we have developed the CFO of the organization, but the reports are private. We can, if you want, we can have a mail and we can share information about this, but the reports are not public. So I don't know if I have some information, but I don't. I cannot give the report with the calculation. In the in the project, we have developed the public report on the voluntary program, and there are some information on the website. If you need some other information, you need to speak with us by mail so we can exchange more information. Okay? Privat.
Okay, thank you, Simona. It's very clear.
Okay.
Dinko, have you more information about some international companies who were involved in the voluntary program in Croatia? To answer Ivan's question?
Unfortunately not. We have Ericsson Nikola Tesla that is part of the Sweden Ericsson, but I think they only calculated the carbon footprint organization for the Croatian company.
Okay. And to complete your answers for Ivan, there was one organization from Greece, but we have no representatives from Greece today at this webinar. But it is the Egan Motorway, which is part of an international company, and they use the bilan carbon tool to do the carbon footprint, particularly to report their GHG emission in their CSR report. But I think that I don't have many information, but the Egan Motorway, which is a Greek organization, have made it, and maybe it was only for the activities in Greece and not abroad. But they are part of an international company, so maybe they merge their results, or I don't know where they're due to have the global carbon footprint of the organization, but they have some international organization who follows the training, but who also calculated, but to know if they use the tool to calculate all the activities at international level and abroad. I think that
Okay.
they keep the the result private.
Yeah, thank you for this. Are the emission factors that have been developed in each country is merged in the bilan carbon database?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can
Yes.
access to the tool if, sorry, I will just show you if I can take the hand to share my screen again. Here one. Can you see my screen? No. Can you see my screen? No.
No.
Sorry. Yeah, this one here. Now?
Yes.
Okay. So you can consult the list of the organizations involved in the voluntary program in the website. You have the program parts and voluntary program. You have the logo of each organization. And if you would like to access the Bilan Carbon Clim'Foot tool with the emission factors, you need to log in or to create an account. Just fill in this form, and we will validate your account, and you can access to the emission factors and the different tool available on the website, on the platform.
Oh, okay, that's very cool.
Yeah. And if you need more information from particular partner, you have in the contact part the address email of each partner, so that if you want to contact Simona from NAI, you have her address here and other partners too.
We were perfect.
There is a question on the chat. So Glisoni Marco have right. Can you show us some aggregated data of different case studies, maybe for confrontation and calculation of benchmarks? So I think Dinko and Simona, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the final results of the organization footprint is not available on the website. It's still private. It's still private information, or it can be shared.
Sorry, I lost you. Could you repeat this
Yes,
last part?
we have a question from Glisoni Marco who write on the chat. Can you show us some aggregated data of different case studies, maybe for confrontation on calculation of benchmarks? But I think that the results of organizations still private.
Yes,
Yes,
they
it's not
were.
possible to share the results. So Glisoni Marco, if you can hear, it's not possible to share you the organization's results because it's still private. But as I show you, you have the result of you have the name of all organizations who were involved in the project. So maybe if they share on their website or on their CSR report their own results, maybe you can consult them, but we can't put them on the website because it's still private. I have also a question from Celine Serrano who wrote, the tool is not available. We get page not found. Celine, to access to the tool, you need to subscribe. You need to fill in the form and we will validate your accounts. And after that, you can access to the tool and the other material, which is still private. But you need to subscribe before access to the tool. And I think that's all. Okay. So for all of us, if you need more information, do not hesitate to consult the website. And here below, you have the contacts page in which you have the email of each responsible partner to address some question or to have more information. And for other partners, I don't know if you have other questions. And I'm wondering if in the attendees there are someone who are not from the consortium's countries. Maybe are there someone who are not from France, Italy, Croatia, Hungary, Greece? So maybe if there are no questions, we will close the meeting. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to contact us. And I hope this webinar allow you to learn more about the project, even if it was short, to make a summary of a 3-year project. And if you have some expectation about particular points like the emission factors databases, or how to set up a voluntary program, or or what are the training available, do not hesitate to write to us. We will answer to all your questions. If you cannot use your microphone, you can also use the chat to write some question. I see a question from Roberta Paranunzio. I subscribed last weekend and I didn't get any login to download the tool. Roberta Paranunzio. I will check in the last subscribers if your name appear, but if you had more, I will write you our address. Roberta, I have wrote the address on the chat box. So if you can send us an email, I will check if your name is on, but you don't need to you do not need to receive a login. You need to subscribe. You have to create your own login. We will just validate your account, but I will check, and if you can send me an email, I will answer you soon after the end of this meeting. No, welcome. And I have another question. I think it's Stefania Griot. Sorry, I don't know if you have told yet that is it ongoing an update to the new ISO version 2018. Actually, there was the updated is not scheduled, but you can. I will watch your question and see how we can update the tool. But with this, with the Bilan Carbon tool, it was compatible with the oldest version of the ISO, and you have to account all your emission, and not only those for the scope 1 and 2, as you can't distinguish which emission are from the scope 1 or which emission are from the scope 3. But we can check if it's still available with this new version and make an update on the website to inform the users that if the tool is still compatible with the new ISO version or not. So if other person have a question, do not hesitate to use the chat box. So maybe there are no longer any questions. So thank you for the attendance. And if you would like to develop a specific point, as I told you, do not hesitate to send us an email, and we can develop the specific webinar or about a more technical subject or other things you would like to develop further. So thank you for the attendance and see you. I'll close the meeting now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for my speakers, Dinko and Simona, to present your testimonies. I think it was an important part for the attendance.